up, guys? It's your boy, Barca Boy 103. Today, different kind of video on the channel. To be honest, I don't really want to make a news video right now because we're still kind of unclear on what's going on. So that hopefully will come in the next few days. But today, I want to discuss Xavi's time as the Barcelona manager and also give it a rating and decide whether or not it was a success or was it a failure. What I want to do is kind of go through the timeline of Xavi's time at Barcelona, the different roller coasters, the ups and the down, and then kind of judge it based on that. Of course, in the comments down below, let me know your thoughts as well. What would you give Xavi's rating over his managerial tenure as Barcelona's coach? Would you consider it a success or a failure? But let's get into it. We're going to talk about the pros and cons, of course, the things that Xavi did very well, the things that he didn't do well, the things maybe that led to him not succeeding overall, because I think we can all admit that since he's been sacked, things have not gone the way it should have gone, but you can still get sacked and still have an overall good time as the manager. So let's get into it. Of course, Xavi came in mid-November of 2021. He was chilling in Qatar, and then all of a sudden, Laporta, Aleman, and Jordi Cruyff flew over and begged him to join. At the time, Koeman was dead on his feet. The previous summer, Laporta wanted to sack Koeman, but they couldn't find anyone to come in. So he said, you know what, we'll give Koeman one more ride of the storm. Of course, Laporta just came in as the president as well. We lost Messi, and you know, things were not going in the best of directions. Of course, this is the summer after the Messi left. We already had one full season without Messi. Koeman again dead on his feet, and Xavi was kind of the only one in the market that made sense. So there were other options as well, which I cannot remember off the top of my head, but everyone wanted Xavi. The board, the fans, even the players wanted Xavi at this point. It was his time. And he decided to come in. I think he paid a lot of money out of his own pocket to join. He came in, brought the excitement back, brought the DNA back, brought the identity back. We were in 9th place in La Liga, dead on our feet, just hoping to get top 4 at this point, because you know we're not competing anywhere else. Champions League, Copa del Rey, Super Cup, wherever the case may be, we weren't competing whatsoever. We just needed top 4 just for Champions League football next season. That was all. Xavi came in November. Laporta said to him, bring this team back to a good level. Just get us Champions League. That's all we want. If you win the Super Cup, Copa del Rey, good run. God forbid, win the Champions League. That's all a bonus. Just get us top 4. That's all Laporta told Xavi. Then in the summer, we're going to regroup, and we're going to go from there. What does Xavi do? He changed his team like no tomorrow. Brings back the challenges. Brings back the 4 Ps. And all of a sudden, the team that looked dead and shite, and I mean shite, under Koeman, all of a sudden looks alright. And look at the Xavi lineup during the time as well. I think his first lineup had like Ilyas Akumac starting on the wing, and it was a crazy time. Not only was the squad very weak, a lot of injuries at the time, COVID was still kicking about during that moment, but Xavi comes in and just brings back an identity, and he takes us then from November until January, where we got in some good results. We're playing, you know, alright. There's still no big jump as of yet, but then we hit January. First month of January, we were dead on our feet with COVID. But remember, we played against Mallorca away. If I'm not mistaken, we had a whole entire team that's just... We had, I think, what, 7 or 8 first-team players at that point, and everyone else was on the bench. Like, Estanias Pedrola was on the bench, making his debut in the game. Mika Marmo was on the bench, making his debut in this game. And we still won that game 1-0 against Mallorca. When they had a fairly strong side, of course, that was kind of the story of the Luke de Jong remontada as well. Then we go into the Super Cup, where in the semi-final, of course, we had El Clasico straight from the get-go. It wasn't set up for a final Clasico, but it was the Clasico from the semi-final, and we lose 3-2 in extra time. But what did we do? What was different from this time under Koeman? We competed. Keep in mind, under Koeman, we never, in his, year and a bit as a manager, we never won a big game. No Clásicos, Atletico Madrid, Champions League, nothing. I think his biggest win was 2-0 away against Juventus in the Champions League group stages. That was his only, you know, decent big game win. That was, I guess, a bigger team, of course. You go in the Copa del Rey, of course, in a big games. He's won big games, but never a big game against a big team. Xavi comes in. We compete against Real Madrid. We give them a hell of a good run for our money. And keep in mind, again, we're starting Luke de Jong up front, and he actually scored a goal in the game as well. And that really, I think, kick-started Barcelona's run late into January, February, and March, where we just looked sensational. You bring in, I think, we brought in, of course, the 4 keys January signings. Dani Alves on a free, Alba on a free, Adama on loan, then spending 50 million on Ferran Torres. Of course, 3 forwards and a right back. That just gave us a resurgence. Keep in mind, again, our forward line was poor. We were playing Des on the wing. We were playing Ilyas Akumac. Ferran Jugla, even though he's a striker, was playing out on the left. We needed forwards and we pull off, 4 elite signings, spending zero money during that time. Of course, the installments for Ferran Torres started in the summer. Oba came in on free, Adam alone, and Dani Alves free. So we spent no money, brought in 4 top players. Of course, Dani Alves, whether he's top or not, you can make that judgment. And then we go on an unbelievable run. And once Xavi got, decent forwards, he was in the job for about 2 months. We go on this unbelievable run. We're beating Napoli 4-2, Osasuna 4-0, Bilbao 4-0, Madrid 4-0. I think in the end we got knocked out of the Copa del Rey against Athletic Club at the MMS. Again, we had some injury issues during the time. I think Ferran Torres just came in. So if that Copa del Rey game was a bit later, who knows? But still, during that time, we're still adapting. I think Ferran Torres just signed. I think that was his first game. I think he scored a goal in the purple kit. So then you're thinking, all right, we're out of all the competitions. Champions League, we were of course in the Europa League at the time, and then of course the 2 cups were done. So we're still going into La Liga. We're performing exceptionally well. Some people think that this time was the best time under Xavi. We get some big wins. We're competing. We're dominating matches. Frankfurt happens, and the Camp Nou. I tell you what, if we had a regular game, I honestly think we could have went on and won the Europa League. I think just because the players came out, see a whole entire white stadium at the Camp Nou, kind of rocked them a little bit, and you can still tell Barcelona mentally weren't there in Europe. But you know what? Then we go and we beat Betis at the Benito Villamarín 2-1. Jordi Alba scored in the last second. That secured us top 4. I think in the end we finished 3rd place, going from 9th to 3rd place. Exceptional work there from Xavi, and again we competed. We did lose, of course, the Super Cup Clásico 3-2, but we were so close. Extra time, we then clapped them at the Bernabeu 4-0, even though Ancelotti's setup was piss poor with his 4-4-2. He did not adapt whatsoever. We still clapped them in that game, and that game should have been more 5-0 or 6-0 at the time. Bloody hell, we absolutely cooked them. So we end the season off 3rd place. We got our Champions League, which again was Xavi's minimum objective. We looked all right, and we had that unbelievable spell from beginning of February to end of March, where that 2 months we're just winning games 4-0 and we're looking great. Summer happens, we sell some assets, we get players that Xavi wants, of course. He got every player he wanted except for Bernardo Silva. And what was the objective this season? To compete and to win titles. We go on, we win the double, of course. The first half of the season, I think it was still adaptation. We were still bringing integrating the new players in. We remember the overhaul of the squad we had, by the way. We sold / got rid of about 15 players and brought in 8. And some of those 8 came in a bit late. Bellerin, Alonso, Alba left after the João Gamper. A lot of stuff are still happening. And, Xavi wanting Alonso is, of course, one of the big question marks of his tenure. We'll talk about that in pros and cons later on. But then, we started the season okay. We drew 0-0 against Vallecano. And then we got some wins. We were, beating Victoria Pilsen 5-1. Lundo scores his first hat trick. And thinking, all right, here's the kickstart. We then hit this stretch in October where we lost a few big games against Bayern Munich. We get eliminated from the Champions League group stages completely. Then we got knocked down to the Europa League. We then lost, of course, the Clásico. And everyone's losing their minds. Oh my God, we sold assets. We spent 200 million. We're already out of the Champions League. We already lost the first Clásico. But what happens? Calm and tranquility from the board, to the players and Xavi. They continue to march on. And then we have, in January, the best performance I have seen from Barcelona since the Luis Enrique days. Of course, semifinal of the Super Cup, we beat Betis that went all the way to penalties. Close game, close encounter. We then hit the Super Cup final against Madrid. They've beaten us every single time in the Super Cup so far since this new format in Saudi Arabia. We go and absolutely cook them 3-1. That is, we dominated them for 90 minutes. They got one, crappy Benzema consolation goal, which is so annoying because if it was 3-0, the scoreline would look way more sexier. But we win our first trophy since the Copa del Rey under Koeman, a year and a half. First trophy under Xavi, you're thinking, this is it. And we continue to fly in La Liga, winning 1-0, building our, philosophy on having a strong, elite defense. Of course, we had back, Balde, Araujo, Christensen, Koundé. Going forward, we were playing well. Korean chances, just not finishing them. That's why a lot of the games finished 1-0. Then when you're at 1-0, 80th minute to go, you're going to be a bit more conservative. We go on, of course, we had the Europa League encounter against Manchester United. That was a very even tie. Of course, it was scripted and rigged for Barcelona to face United in the round of qualification for the Europa League to get the viewerships up. In the end, with them having Old Trafford in the second leg, it gave them a big advantage. Even then, we drew 2-2 at the Camp Nou with a close game. We were 1-0 up at Old Trafford, and then who scored for them? Was it Anthony? Anthony scored the winner, but I think someone scored to make it 1-1. Was it Fred or something like that? And again, during that time, Barcelona were really poor starting halves, and they kind of capitalized United. Credit to them again. It comes down, I think, more to the mentality that we, of course, suffered, that we talked about last season as well, in those big moments against, Frankfurt. Same thing happened here. But then we go on, we win La Liga. Not only do we win La Liga, we win it with the best defense in the history of Barcelona, in the history of La Liga. We win the league at Espanyol as well, relegating them at the same time. Beautiful moment. Of course, the Camp Nou closure happens as well. I'm bringing back the memories. I think today is actually the anniversary for the Camp Nou closure and the win against Mallorca. I'm getting a little emotional there, but of course, we send off legends as well, and Piqué retiring, Busquets and Jordi Alba left, and we win the double in Xavi's first full season, but second term, you could say, as the Barcelona manager. Summer hits again. We're looking okay. We have to build on what we've won. We've won the doubles, and next season you're thinking, okay, you have to win at least 2 trophies out of 4 to keep it at least at a bare minimum. We don't do too well in the summer transfer window. We, of course, make 2 great signings for free in Inigo and Gundogan before we hit preseason training camp. We needed to pivot with Busquets leaving, and we got our 7th choice option. We brought in a good young striker in Victor Roque, but he wasn't supposed to join until the summer. And then we bring on Joao Felix and Joao Cancelo on the final day, final hour of the transfer window, when you're already 4 games into La Liga. Joao Gamper preseason, all done. So that summer was very, very poor. You go into the season, and Barcelona just never clicked. I think we started off the season okay. I think we drew 0-0 against Getafe, which again is always a tough game. We beat Betis 5-0, Antwerp 5-0. You're thinking, okay, if we can cook like this, things can happen. We then see a dip in form where Barcelona were dominating games, but just not finishing their chances in the final third. Oh my god, Rafinha missing blinders, Joao Felix missing chances, Lewandowski, I remember that first 4 months of the season, Lewandowski was absolutely wank. And then you have, the key injury to Xavi in the midfield, where he, tears his ACL and shatters his meniscus. That was, of course, a big blow. But then Barcelona just never clicked. I mean, the team, like Xavi was mentioning a lot during the season, that the team did play better from the season before, but just in the final third, they weren't clicking. But also at the back, we talked about, of course, we built last season on having a strong defense, the best defense in La Liga history, the best defense in Barcelona's history in the league as well. And that defense completely falls through. Firstly, Balde is inconsistent, then of course does his hamstring and is out for half the season. But individual mistakes killed off the year. Not only from the defense, but in the midfield, giving the ball away silly. And the problem is that not only do we make a lot of individual mistakes, but every single time the opponents capitalize on those mistakes. Xavi then resigns at the end of January, saying, look, I don't think I'm the right man to take this product forward. I will finish off the season, but I think someone else has to come in. We then, after Xavi resigned, we had a little bit of a bounce where we're winning games. Our second came back from injury and replaced Enrique Peña. We're keeping some clean sheets as well. And then you had the Champions League draw, where the draw is not impossible. You avoided a lot of the big teams until at least the final. And then, again, it's the hope that kills you. Individual mistakes again costing us against PSG, and following all this kind of remontada form from Xavi, winning our games 3-0 against Atletico Madrid away at the Metropolitano Stadium. The board then begged Xavi to stay. He stays. They announce it. They reveal it. Xavi says one little quote in a press conference, and then he gets sacked. Unbelievable. And that kind of summarizes his tenure, as a quick summary of his 2 seasons and a half. But let's discuss the pros and cons under Xavi. Of course, the pros have to be, I would say, the philosophy, the DNA, the love for the club, his connections with the player as well, the players in the dressing room as well was huge. Bringing back the identity that we missed out on, under Valverde, Setien, and Koeman. Improving our set pieces as well. Shout out to Sergio Allegri. I remember Barcelona would go a whole season without scoring a corner, or the one corner we did score was like second game of the season when Piqué would just score a random header. They definitely improved on that aspect. Bring the belief back in the fans, making some fantastic signings as well. I think, and when you reach the con point of view, I think one of the biggest mistakes Xavi did make was not bringing experience in his coaching staff. Yes, I understand he wants to have his brothers and his cousins and his friends, people that you trust, that you can work with and you have the connection, that's fine. I think if Xavi brought in a few experienced, number 2s, number 3s, that could have made a big influence. In terms of signings, I don't think any of Xavi's signings were poor apart from Alonso. Bellerin, yes, he was a free transfer last day. We just needed a right back. In the end, we sold Bellerin for more money, so I don't really count that. Apart from Alonso, I really don't see anything poor from Xavi. I think one of the other cons as well, I think the biggest turning point for Xavi and why, he's ended up being sacked and why this past season that we just had was a failure, was being very lackluster in the pivot position last summer. We knew with Busquets leaving, you had to bring in someone top. You know, we were linked with Zubamendi. We were linked with, I think, Sofiane Amrabat a lot as well. I remember being in Barcelona. Gerard Miro came out with his top, 10 pivot list at Barcelona 1. You have at the top, Zubamendi, Sofiane Amrabat. I think Wilder Rodriguez was somewhere in that list. Then you have like 7th place Oriol Romeu. And that's what we end up getting. I think if we signed a top pivot that summer, things would be completely different. And if you look on last season, we finished with 85 points. We had that unbelievable title. We talked about it already, building on the defense. We finished that year with 88 points. We come into this season, crap. One of the worst seasons I've ever seen at Barcelona. Individual mistakes galore, left, right, center. We finished 2nd place on 85 points. So only dropping 3 points from the season before. And if you told me at the beginning of the season, look, you're gonna only drop 3 points from last season, I would be like, okay, that's gonna be good. But what happens though? Not only did Real Madrid have an unbelievable season, they also get unbelievably lucky as well with VAR decision. If you look at the VAR table without the mistakes, Barcelona would win the title on 89 points. So again, I think Real Madrid were good this season, but also they had a lot of things go in their favor. It makes you think that, was that past season a failure? 100% it was, but it could have been something different if things were done right in the previous summer transfer window. That summer transfer window, the way we operated, I think in the end set up the team for failure. Because what's always the mentality that people talk about? When you have a big team, you have a successful team, you always build and make it improve. What did Pep does at City? He wins the treble, he makes a few 2 big sales and brings in 2 big players. It always happens because you have to keep the competitiveness in the team. If you just keep the same old squad going, winning, they're going to lose that urgency. They're going to lose that fight. And we'll see that now with Man City, especially with Pep leaving in 2025. But that summer, I think, absolutely killed us. But still, with that crap summer, 85 points. That is ridiculous for how poor we've been all season. And again, fine margins, getting knocked out of the Copa del Rey against Athletic Club. We were up 2-1 going into halftime, and then we just fucking blew it. Champions League, we were up 4-2 on aggregate. We blew it. We were in the Super Cup in the final. That was, I think, all on Xavi. That was a tactical disaster class from him playing a high line. Absolutely cost us. But you're looking at it from the grand scheme of things. Is that all down to Xavi himself? No, because we were just talking about individual mistakes this season and also the board operating in the summer. I think Xavi had to do this whole entire season with one hand tied behind his back and also with that added pressure from the fan base and media. Look, he still failed, of course, this season. I'm not taking that away from him. 0 trophies out of 4, and the way we've got knocked out is disgraceful. But if you look at it from the grand scheme of things, you take off the negative cap, take off the negative lens. You look at it from Xavi's perspective, from a neutral point of view, it's not as bad as people make it seem. Also, I think one of the pros that Xavi had that I forgot to mention as well is his trust in La Masia. Oh my freaking god. This man has given about, what, 15, 18 debuts in the first team. Of course, that first, half of the season when Koeman was sacked, he kind of had to because we had absolutely no players whatsoever. So those ones, Estanias, Chadriad, Mika Marmo getting their debuts, those ones kind of make sense. But look what he's done with Pau Cubarsí. Look what he's done with Hector Fort, Marc Gueyu. Look what he's done with Fermin Lopez. No one knew. I remember, I think one of my first TikTok videos was about Fermin Lopez being a young gem in training, really impressing Xavi. He gives him a chance in preseason, scores a wonder goal against Madrid. Like, all right, you're in the first team this season. Gets promoted, I think, in January as well. Finishes the season as the 2nd highest goal scorer for Barcelona, 11. With I think him and Ferran Torres have 11, and Lewandowski, of course, with 26, and I think Rafinha and Joao Felix have 10. He finishes 2nd tied for goal scorer. It is astonishing what Xavi did with these young players. Giving the minutes to Lamine. I forgot to even mention Lamine Yamal. Yes, he played, I think, 3 minutes last season, but this season with Dembele leaving, he gave him more of opportunity. He's absolutely shined, and now apparently he's gonna be getting the freaking number 10 jersey. Like, it's what Xavi's done with the academy, bringing back the Barcelona DNA and philosophy was astonishing. I think the con really comes down to Barcelona's economic situation. I think if Xavi was given full freedom by players he wants to play. Remember, he mentioned in the press conference where that led to his sacking, that old coaches, your Setiens, your Valverde, your Enrique, Pep, Rijkaard, they always ask for players and they get them. I want these 2 players out, these 2 players in. The board go and do it. Look what Pep did. I want Deco, funnily enough, Ronaldinho out, promote Busquets, and we're gonna, sign, who did we sign in that summer? Anyways, But Xavi never could be able to do that. It's like, okay, Xavi, you want Lewandowski, we gotta get rid of this player. Okay, we can do this, but then these two had to be sacrificed. I just think under healthy circumstances, this could have been a much better outcome. And I think that the cons for Xavi, from his point of view, from the manager perspective, mainly comes down to his coaching staff not being that experienced. I think if he had someone like a Dominic Torrent on the sideline, maybe someone like Juan Carlos Untué, of course not him specifically, but someone with that kind of philosophy, someone with that kind of profile, like, things could have been much different. I think that's one of Xavi's main dissatisfactions. I think overall, if I'm rating Xavi's tenure at Barcelona, I'm looking at a 7.5, 8 out of 10. I think a lot of it comes down to outside factors. I think what he's done when he's come in at the worst moment in the club's history. We were effing 9th, and he had to pay money out of his own freaking pocket to leave his club in Qatar. He comes in, changes everything. He's given up a lot on his side as well to continue coaching, to continue helping. Remember, he took a salary cut as well in that 2022 summer to help sign with players. Of course, Laporta had to give bank guarantees as well to, register players like Jules Koundé and stuff like that. Like, it was wild. Of course, this season as well, that's past summer transfer window, absolutely, catastrophe. And yet again, this season, 85 points in La Liga, and fine margins in other competitions where we were eliminated, apart from, of course, the Super Cup final. So I would rate Xavi's time as the Barcelona manager around 7.5, 8 out of 10. You look at the squad that if you look at the picture of the squad where he joined Barcelona, look at the squad picture now, it's second to none what he's done, the revolution he's had, the players that the improvement we've had. Of course, it comes down to the board, Aleman, Jordi Cruyff, what they've done as well. Of course, Deco is going to be his first summer, so I can't really, chuck him in there. But Aleman and Cruyff, what they've done with changing the squad as well and helping Xavi, build the best team possible, even with the financial restriction, cannot go unnoticed as well. But the improvement that Xavi has made, we were dead on our feet, 8-2, we were absolutely on the floor. Messi leaves, Koeman, again, he's in there all on his own as well. The squad was, that 21-22 squad is the worst team I've seen Barcelona have in my life. The amount of players that are scamming first team numbers there was astonishing. And Xavi's come in and improved that. So personally for me, I would give Xavi's time like a 7.5, 8 out of 10. You can definitely argue either or. I think minimum 7, maximum 8. So you're looking in that category. I think if you're giving him under 7, you're just being bitter. I think if you're giving him over an 8, you're being a bit generous. I think his time at Barcelona 100% was a success. And I just think that under, more healthier economic environment, things could have been much different. Of course, the media side of it will never ever change. The media will be on top of you. They will attack you if you're doing poorly. They will praise you and, lick you up if you're doing great. That's always going to happen. But I just think if Xavi had a decent coaching staff, healthier economic situation, getting, at least the top 2 targets that he wants in the summer, things could have been so much different. And despite that not happening, I would say 2.5 seasons have been a success. Of course, when he came in, main objective was to finish top 4. Check mark, got that. Last season, what was the objective? Win titles, won the double, check that. This season, objective, win titles, compete. He failed. I would say the squad and the players failed him more, but of course, he's the one. He is the manager. He decides the team, the tactics, and everything. So he has to take some of the blame for that as well. I fail to really see how people think that Xavi's time at Barcelona was a failure. I think it was nothing short of an utter success. And it gives me hope to hopefully that if he comes in the future, comes back, whether it be, 2030, 2029, 2028, 2031, he comes back in a healthier environment, comes back into a healthier state of the club, what he can do. And hopefully he goes out there and does another job and learns and gets some more experience from there. Maybe gets more open to, adding experience and, strong people to his coaching staff. Things could be much, much different. But again, those are the pros and cons. I think, if you take those cons away and you emphasize the pros, things could have been much different. But again, with the pros, promoting La Masia, bringing back the DNA, making Barcelona more competitive again. We were going into Clásicos and big games thinking that we're going to lose 100%. And now we're going in there being able to compete. In regards to cons, I don't think really signings come into it. For me, it's mainly, again, the coaching staff and, the economic situation of the club and how he had to deal with that. But I think Xavi's time overall at Barcelona was an absolute success, and hopefully he does come back as a manager in the future once we are, healthier, once he has a bit more experience as a manager as well. Him coming in as well, just straight from the Qatar job as well, is absolutely crazy, but we saw what he did with his side there. They were in the treble and they were playing well, so the identity shift was definitely easy. But overall, for me, I'll probably give it 7.5 out of 10 for Xavi's tenure at Barcelona. Of course, in the comments down below, let me hear your thoughts. What would you rate his tenure overall, the 2.5 seasons? What would you say the pros and cons are? What would you say were the key deciding factors as well? I think for me, the failure part of it, I think the key factors of that is maybe having a little lack of experience, and again the coaching staff as well, the financial situation. But I think I wouldn't say the pros outweigh it, but the pros maybe, you know, help out with the cons. That's why I just think there's just a few tweaks here and there. Things could have been much different. Remember, people were saying at the end of last season, oh, he's gonna be the Sir Alex Ferguson of Barcelona. That's what the media were saying, and he gets sacked the next season. I think Xavi has coached 145 games for Barcelona. He's now in the top 10 of manager appearances for Barcelona. I think Valverde has 147 games managed. Luis Enrique is like 181. Rijkaard's it's like the top with like 273. I think number one is Cruyff with 400. Then Rijkaard's like 273. Pep's like 240. So he's like already top 10 managers in regards to appearances. So that's how much of an impact he's had on these 2.5 years, and also how many games we played as well. But I think overall his time at Barcelona was a success. Again, in the comments down below, let me know your thoughts. Give me your ratings as well if you agree or disagree. Any points that I forgot to mention, please leave it all down in the comments below. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like and subscribe down below if you haven't already. And I will see you guys next time on the channel. Take care and Forza Barca.